March 2nd, 2026. 0347 local time. The Gulf of Oman. The USS Halsey is in the middle of a routine night patrol. There's nothing special about tonight. No heightened alert status, no intelligence warning of imminent attack, no unusual Iranian activity detected. Just another night in the Gulf, another patrol, another crew counting down the days until deployment ends. At 3:47, a C-802 anti-ship cruise missile strikes the Halsey's forward superstructure without warning. The ship's radar never saw it coming. I'm your host at U.S. Defense Review, where we analyze the military operations that shape global security. The June 11th attack was the most successful Iranian ambush of the entire Gulf confrontation. A missile that approached from the perfect angle to exploit a gap in radar coverage, striking before defensive systems could engage. But what happened 33 minutes later would demonstrate that even the most successful attack triggers overwhelming retaliation. The Iranians achieved tactical surprise. They paid a strategic price. Let's understand how the ambush worked. The AN/SPY-1D radar is one of the most capable air defense sensors ever built. It can track hundreds of targets simultaneously across nearly 200 nautical miles of range. It can detect stealth aircraft, ballistic missiles, and sea-skimming cruise missiles, but it has blind spots. The radar arrays are mounted on the ship's superstructure in a fixed configuration. 4 flat panels arranged to provide 360-degree coverage. In theory, the overlapping coverage eliminates gaps. In practice, there are angles where the coverage is thinner, areas where the superstructure itself blocks or attenuates the radar beam, zones where a very low-flying, very quiet missile might slip through. The Iranians had studied these vulnerabilities for years. The C-802 that struck the Halsey launched from a position carefully calculated to exploit the weakest angle of approach. The missile flew at 5 meters altitude, lower than most cruise missiles, hugging the wave tops. It approached from bearing 237, an angle where the Halsey's port-forward radar array had reduced sensitivity due to partial blockage from the ship's own mast. At 3:44:31, the missile entered the outer detection range of the Halsey's radar. The radar saw something, a faint return, possible contact. The system flagged it for operator review. At 3:44:38, the radar operator examined the contact. Small, slow-moving, low altitude, possibly a bird, possibly wave clutter, possibly nothing. He decided it was nothing. That decision, made in good faith, based on years of experience filtering false contacts, would cost lives. At 3:45:47, the contact entered the inner detection range. The radar return strengthened slightly. The system upgraded the contact from possible to probable. No alarm triggered. The system required additional confirmation before alerting the ship. At 3:46:23, the contact entered the close-in zone. The radar finally achieved solid lock. The system immediately classified the contact as hostile. At 3:46:24, general quarters sounded throughout the USS Halsey. Time to impact, approximately 83 seconds. 83 seconds should be enough. The SM-2 engagement sequence takes approximately 45 seconds from alarm to launch. The phalanx can engage targets inside 2 nautical miles. The problem was geometry. The C-802 was approaching from the port-forward quarter, where the radar coverage was weakest. The ship's SM-2 launchers were oriented for broad area defense, not close-in emergency engagement. The fire control solution required the ship to maneuver to bring weapons to bear. At 3:46:32, the officer of the deck ordered emergency turn to starboard, attempting to bring more of the ship's defensive systems to bear on the incoming threat. But a 9,200-ton destroyer doesn't turn instantly. The maneuver would take 20 to 30 seconds to change the ship's heading significantly. At 3:46:41, 2 SM-2 missiles launched. The engagement was rushed. Fire control solution incomplete. Weapons released based on partial tracking data. At 3:47:14, the first SM-2 reached its calculated intercept point. The C-802 wasn't there. The incomplete fire control solution had predicted the wrong position. the SM-2 detonated in empty air. At 3:47:17, the second SM-2 engaged. This one was closer. The fire control system had refined its solution during the brief additional time, but closer wasn't close enough. Proximity detonation. Fragmentation struck the C-802. The missile was damaged. Its flight path shifted, but it didn't stop. At 3:47:23, the Phalanx CIWS engaged. The 20mm rounds reached toward the incoming missile. The C-802 was tumbling now, damaged by the SM-2 fragments. The Phalanx's tracking algorithms struggled with the erratic motion. At 3:47:29, the C-802 struck the USS Halsey. The impact point was the forward superstructure, the section containing the bridge, the combat information center, and the ship's primary command facilities. The 165-kilogram warhead detonated on contact. The explosion was devastating. The bridge was destroyed. The officer of the deck, the helmsman, the quartermaster, 2 lookouts, all killed instantly. Captain David Morrison, who had been on the bridge monitoring the night watch, was thrown against the forward bulkhead and killed. The combat information center, 1 deck below, was heavily damaged. The blast penetrated the overhead, killing 3 more personnel and wounding a dozen. 6 dead in the first second, including the commanding officer. The Halsey was decapitated. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Park was in her cabin when the missile struck. She was the executive officer, second in command. With the captain dead, she was now in charge. She reached the damaged CIC at 3:49, 100 seconds after impact. What she found was chaos becoming order. The surviving crew were already responding, fighting fires, treating wounded, restoring systems. The ship's training had kicked in automatically. "Report," Park demanded. The answers came piece by piece. Captain Morrison, dead. Bridge crew, dead. All 5. CIC casualties, 3 dead, 12 wounded. Forward superstructure, heavily damaged, fires contained. Propulsion, operational. Weapons, forward VLS damaged. Aft VLS operational. Radar, SPY-1D degraded but functional. The Halsey could still sail. She could still fight, partially. And she still had Tomahawk missiles in her aft VLS cells. Lieutenant Commander Park faced the hardest decision of her life. She had just assumed command of a badly damaged ship with 9 dead crew members. Her captain was among the casualties. The normal chain of command had been shattered in an instant. The conservative choice was to focus on survival, stabilize the ship, treat the wounded, report to higher authority, and await orders. But Park knew the doctrine. She knew what every previous commander had done when their ship was hit. She knew what was expected. At 3:52, she gave the order that would define her career. "Weapons officer, target the launch site. We have trajectory data. Fire whatever we have in the aft VLS." The weapons officer, Lieutenant Michael Chen, himself wounded with a gash across his forehead, responded without hesitation. At 3:53:14, the first Tomahawk launched from the Halsey's aft VLS cells. The ship was burning forward. 9 of her crew were dead. Her command structure had been destroyed. And she was launching missiles at the enemy. 6 Tomahawks in 38 seconds. Target: the calculated launch position on the Iranian coast. Park then transmitted to 5th Fleet. 5th Fleet Halsey, we are hit. 9 KIA, including the captain. Ship damaged. Forward superstructure destroyed. I have assumed command. Counterstrike initiated. Request expanded targeting and support. The message was received at 5th Fleet headquarters at 3:55. Vice Admiral Richardson read the report with a mixture of horror and admiration. 9 dead. Captain dead. XO in command of a burning ship, already launching counterstrikes. That was the standard. That was the expectation. The Halsey was meeting it. At 4:02, Richardson authorized an expanded strike. The target list reflected the severity of the attack. The launch site, already targeted by Halsey's missiles, the suspected battery deployment base, the regional IRGC Naval Command that controlled the battery, the radar installation that had provided targeting data, the communications node that connected the battery to higher command, 5 targets, comprehensive elimination of the network that had ambushed the Halsey. The assets responded. The cruiser USS Vela Gulf launched 12 Tomahawks at 4:07. The destroyer USS Sterett added 8 more at 4:09. 2 B-1B Lancer bombers, already airborne on routine patrol, diverted toward the regional command center. They carried 48 JDAMs between them. At 4:20, 33 minutes after the C-802 struck the Halsey, the first American weapons arrived. The launch site was hit first, by the Halsey's own missiles. 6 Tomahawks saturated the coastal position where the C-802 had originated. The launcher was already gone. Mobile systems always relocated immediately after firing. But the support infrastructure was still there. The command vehicle, the reload equipment, the crew's concealment positions. All destroyed. At 4:24, the Vela Gulf's missiles arrived at the deployment base. This was the home garrison for the battery that had attacked the Halsey. The facility where the launchers returned between missions, where the crews lived, where maintenance was conducted. 8 Tomahawks struck the base. Barracks collapsed. Vehicle parks burned. The crews who hadn't been aboard the launcher during the attack died in their beds. At 4:28, the Sterett's missiles reached the radar installation. This facility had provided the targeting data that made the ambush possible. The radar had tracked the Halsey, calculated her course and speed, transmitted the information to the launcher. 4 Tomahawks demolished the antenna farm and the operations building. The operators who had contributed to 9 American deaths died with their equipment. At 4:31, additional missiles struck the communications node. The link between the battery and higher command was severed. At 4:38, the B-1Bs arrived over the regional command center. This was the facility that had planned the ambush, that had identified the radar gap, calculated the approach angle, timed the launch for maximum surprise. 48 500-pound JDAMs struck the compound. The above-ground structures were obliterated. The underground bunkers were collapsed or breached. The officers who had orchestrated the attack died with their planning documents. At 4:45, the strike was complete. Total damage assessment. Launch site. Destroyed. Launcher escaped. Deployment base. Destroyed. Radar installation. Destroyed. Communications node. Destroyed. Regional command center. Destroyed. Estimated Iranian casualties. 150 to 200 personnel. The entire network that had planned and executed the ambush was eliminated. The USS Halsey, meanwhile, was fighting to survive. The fires forward were extinguished by 4:30. The flooding from the hull breach was contained by 5 o'clock. The ship stabilized at 5:45. Lieutenant Commander Park remained in command throughout the night, coordinating damage control, treating casualties, and preparing the ship for transit. At 6 o'clock, she received confirmation from 5th Fleet. The counterstrike was complete. All targets destroyed. She allowed herself 30 seconds to process that information. Then she returned to the work of saving her ship. The Halsey reached Bahrain at 1800, escorted by the Vela Gulf and Sterett. The transit had taken 14 hours at reduced speed. The repair assessment was extensive. New forward superstructure, new bridge, new CIC equipment, 8 months in dry dock. 9 sailors were buried with full military honors. Captain David Morrison was posthumously promoted to the rank of captain and awarded the Navy Cross. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Park received the Navy Cross for her actions during and after the attack. Her decision to launch counterstrikes within 5 minutes of assuming command, while her ship was still burning, while she was still processing the death of her captain, became a case study in combat leadership. The June 11th engagement demonstrated several sobering lessons. First, even the most sophisticated defenses have gaps. The SPY-1D radar is extraordinary, but not perfect. The Iranians had found a weakness and exploited it. Second, tactical surprise doesn't prevent strategic retaliation. The C-802 achieved complete surprise. The Iranian battery got away, but the infrastructure that supported it was destroyed within 33 minutes. Third, Junior officers can make the hard decisions. Park was an XO, not a captain. She had never commanded a ship in combat. When the moment came, she met it. 33 minutes from a surprise attack that killed 9 Americans to the comprehensive destruction of the attacking network. That's the American response doctrine. It doesn't matter if you achieve surprise. It doesn't matter if you escape with your launcher. What matters is that your base is destroyed. Your command is destroyed. Your radar is destroyed. Your communications are destroyed. You might win the engagement. You won't survive the hour. Stay informed. Stay vigilant. I'll see you in the next one.